What
Okay,
about
so
nutrition? Was there much emphasis or thought put into nutrition?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a great staff here. Um, uh, the the person who heads that up there is very interactive with our guys. We do a lot of communication with them on the front end. So we generally train post practice. We take more of a high low approach, if you will, especially in season. So if we're having a high practice on Wednesday, we usually try to get our lift done, especially at least our lower body emphasis done on Wednesday if we can, to try to match up those stressors. And then we can pull back or do more regenerative tissue work on Thursday. But we'll talk to them and like, hey, Wednesday, it's a high day, it's a hot day, heavy refuel coming off of practice. They get that, they go into the locker room, they get their lifting gear, they change their shoes, they put their stuff down, they come back in. At that point, everyone's had 10 to 15 minutes to refuel either with a fast carb or some Gatorade, or, again, with the population we're working with, Rice Krispie treats are a huge fan favorite
Yeah. See,
of just getting something in.
I'd like to see something like field rations with a high molecular weight carbohydrate, something that because then that's something you could shuttle in, like you said, fast carbs. That's fast carbs, but also like slow carbs, so it would sustain the energy during the workout also, and then there's really no risk of stomach distension or bloating. You have
Mm,
like a like Gatorade. Well, Gatorade's interesting because the original formula, it's called Gatorade because it was made by Florida Gators sports science division in the 60s. The original Gatorade was like about half the amount of carbohydrates it is, because they did some studies to find out how many carbohydrates how much glucose you could ingest over a period of time without spiking insulin, because insulin's a central nervous system depressant, a mild diuretic, and all the things you don't want during
mm,
sports events.
right.
uh, so Gatorade now has changed in that it's almost twice as many carbohydrates, because when they marketed to the public, they wanted it to taste good. Watered down doesn't taste good. And then they've also changed the glucose, the dextrose, which is just like dextrorhodate or right-handed glucose, but they changed the glucose to like fructose or high fructose corn syrup. And so you get like the core is still there, but there's like the G2 is better because the G2 actually went back to the original carbohydrate amount roughly, but then they add some artificial sweeteners in to make it taste better. I'm always like, something I'd like to do long term with First Detachment is find a way to market the field rations, because that's really, I mean, it's great for bodybuilding, intra-workout, but it's really more ideal for like a football game, a football approach, or long distance running. You got the essential amino acids, you have the same electrolytes that are in Gatorade, and even more, a little more. Because another thing with Gatorade, one of the other things they did is reduce the sodium content a little bit when they released it to the public, because obviously sodium doesn't taste that good. So
Right.
really, you want a little bit more sodium, which is what we have also. And I think it'd be hard because there's so many restrictions and regulations, and that getting the education out would be really difficult. But it's really ideal because you have the high molecular weight carbohydrates, so the Gatorade will sit in your stomach. You can feel it. You chug
mm,
Gatorade and go run, you'll feel it sloshing around. High
yeah.
molecular weight carbohydrate won't. It'll go right through the stomach, through into the small intestine. It'll sit there where it can't slosh around, and that's actually where the nutrient absorption occurs. But that's just me
Yeah,
talking
I
about my
mean,
stuff. But
no, but like in my experience working with you, I mean, the field rations have been phenomenal, and I'm not paid by you guys or sponsored by you guys. This is my own opinion and knowledge of it, but this is something that I got in big with you when we started. Um, and again, it's a different avenue, but it's the same conversation as like what you'll find with the current strength and conditioning field is the rules and regulations of the NCAA, who you're
mm-hmm.
working with. Again, remember this from a book. Take a standardized test. Did you remember the information we
Yeah,
taught
yeah,
you? Which may not be wrong, but it may not be right. But
yeah,
currently, it is what's accepted.
Hmm.
yes,
And then again, like the whole, like I remember, oh, I've been here 7 years. I remember 5 years ago, and I'm not going to remember the exact science behind it, but I remember when I first learned about pineapple as a post workout, and pineapple being like the you'll be able to explain it better than I can, but I remember the concept of the carbohydrate, what it was, and it had to be real pineapple. You couldn't use like canned pineapple or stuff in water. But the pineapple's response to post workout, post training, and what that did for the body structure compared to like a Gatorade, compared to like a fruit chew. Um, and I remember printing those things out and giving it to our nutrition staff at the time, which was different back then. but like everyone was like, wow, where did you find this? I'm like, I got it from here. This is what there is more current in the field. And like, that was like a huge thing. But then we started getting pineapple in for our guys. And then that became like, the kids loved it because it was new, you know what I mean? Cause that's the other thing too. Like, you always got to play the game. Like, whatever's going to be truly optimal or perfect for the kid because of the 18 to 22-year-olds that they are, it's always like, I can eat the same thing 6 meals a day for months. My wife hates it because I can eat the same thing and she can't handle that. So these kids are the same way. Like, you're lucky if you can put, like, in my experience, like if you got breakfast at the dining hall, if there's eggs out there 3 days in a row, you are playing with fire, because the kids are going to look at you like, eggs again? Oh, you're going to put eggs again. And it's like, man, so now you're trying to figure out how you can fluff these eggs up. Like, you know, they put ranch seasoning in it the one day, or they put, you know, chive and cheddar one day. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like, again, the process of understanding and the advancement of knowledge in the field. But, you know, I think the good thing, I think, coming down the road is again, has the information is so highly accessible and has people start to get into positions to make changes. And it's not even an outside the box thinking anymore. It's trying to make the box better.
Yeah.
And there are people that are very good intended and have the knowledge, but you're generally always so outnumbered.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a lot of, when we were growing up, a lot of the earlier studies was like maybe military related. It wasn't really athletics. Like I listened to and read some of his research. Dr. Andy Gaplin, like he's got or Galpin. I mean, he's got like the Galpin equation for hydration and just some general rules that like you would have never heard of. But he's working with professional athletes and, you know, those elite of the elite to like really measure and test like what do they need to optimize their performance. And, you know, although they're genetic freaks and super skilled, it's just still like, okay, but how could you make that person still 1 or 2 or 3% better, or whatever the case is, you know? So
yeah, like our kids, like I remember the biggest thing that again, I'm gonna get the numbers wrong right now, but it was, if you're dehydrated, like something like 3%, your power values or your ability to display power drops like by 40% or something like that. And that's not accurate. It's something like that though.
Yeah, well, and the other weird thing is it's kind of, because there's not everyone has the same overlap, but there's the overlap when you feel thirsty, and there's you really have to be conscious, because most people will start getting the downside effects, the reduction in strength output, before the triggers for thirst happen. So if you're not on top of it and consciously thinking about it, and wait until you're actually thirsty, you probably already missed the boat and are not performing as well as you could.
Yeah, and like, you know, like a couple years back, we went. Well, actually, when I was at Buffalo, our second game of the season, we played FAU, and it was like 99 degrees out with like 97% humidity, and it's like you're running around trying to grab 18 to 22-year-olds' attention and be like, hey, I know like that top 10 song playlist you're listening to right now is super captivating, but I've watched you out here screwing around in the hot sun, getting your mind right, and you haven't drank anything in the last 15 minutes. And it's like, you're going to look at me and say, we didn't train hard enough, when you're cramping, because cramping is completely and solely based on the fact that we didn't train hard enough. And then it's going to be me and you having a discussion about things like, drink your stuff, take this, get in out of the sun, get in out of the heat, like do the right thing. Like, you've been out here long enough. Like, and it goes back to, again, like the educational process and like the constant communication with these guys is never ending. But the ones that are truly invested, the ones that want to separate, man, like they're outstanding.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I know we're coming up on time, so I did want to cover a few things with you. If we could, we'll go into another section in a minute, but I did want to just maybe high level 2 to 3 bullet points on, I know there's some really good articles out there that you've contributed to and podcasts that you've talked about, you know, concussion protocol or, you know, head, neck, trap training. If you could bullet point it, and again, I know we're getting close on time here, but just kind of bullet point maybe a few key things you've learned that you implement into a program. What would they be?
I wouldn't have the scientific literature to back this, but in my experience, what I have found is almost the better you can sustain isometric contraction through the best range of motion you have, obviously not pushing through pain or an apparent joint issue, but like, and this is I'm stealing this, everything I've talked to you guys, I've stolen, I've just probably reiterated my own words, but like a lot of the things that have changed my way of thinking with these things are from FRS. And again, I don't believe in there's not one way to do anything. I think everything's very multivariate, very dynamic, but through the knowledge acquired from getting into that area of training and then seeing how it coexists with contact collision sports, I think range of motion and control and isometric contractions in that area, and then obviously supplementing if you're fortunate enough to be able to afford neck machines. Not everybody can, so I tend to lean more towards what you can do without the money. I'm not saying neck machines aren't great, but if you don't understand like truly how the cervical spine works and you're blasting your kids on a neck machine, like I've heard stories of guys breaking necks on neck machines. So like, just because it's a machine doesn't mean it's easy peasy. You can just get in there and go. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Where's their seat height? Where's that load sitting? If it's loaded through the forehead, or if it's going to customize around to the top half of the face, like, is it one of those ones that's just got the rollers? You know what I mean? Like, what's the band tension doing? You know what I mean? Like, you start getting into like the details of like neck flexion. And I am going to be rusty here, but if I remember correctly, when you start to initiate neck flexion, I believe the C2, C3 actually go into extension first. So like when you ask people like, man, in flexion, like what actually happens to the cervical spine, like everything doesn't just flex right away. Like your spine is a dynamic thing. And what's even worse is everyone thinks flexion is just this, or, rotation is just this. Like there's no pure rotation through the cervical spine. You have to have flexion extension, or else the facets, and as you go down further on the spine, the facets collide in rotation. So like if you're doing like truly vertical rotation core work, your lumbar facets are literally slamming into each other, which is going to mess you up down the road. Like you have to flex extend first to clear the facets and then get into your rotation through your spine. And you can take those concepts, not exactly T for T, but you can take those concepts through the whole structure of the spine. And, the spine's an area that a lot of people are afraid to train because, well, I don't have any low backs, so I'm just not going to train this at all. Well, if you don't train your hamstrings, are you ever going to truly get the benefit of what you're trying to achieve out of lower body? Probably not. You know what I mean? So there's just, again, the ability to acquire, or the ability to push yourself to gain and acquire knowledge is something that I strive for. I'm probably a little bit over the top. I'm that guy from Instagram that's looking at my wife as I order more books to make our house look like a library. And she's looking at me like, you didn't even read the last 35 books you bought, but you're buying more. Like, that's something that I've turned into a passion of mine. But again, it's no different than listening to Justin talk about thermodynamics and nutrition. Like, man, like I find it so fascinating to be able to read, sociology and see it in play in my environment every day, or, mechanics,
Sure.
all those things can be carried over when you take a step back and you realize that like nothing's really in its own bucket. You know what I mean? Like if you get a rehab, right? Like energy expenditures is not infinite, it's finite. So if we have a kid in return to play process and he's coming back from maybe a hamstring, right? So the trainers have a protocol for this. And then at some point they say he is good to go back to play. And it's right back to where he left off. It's probably not going to work out well because there needs to be a mitigation. There needs to be a return to play. You know what I mean? Because like, did you run the kid through the whole time of the rehab process? You probably didn't, because you're working on the specific concepts of what athletic trainers do to try to supplement and get through wherever the limitation was and then get back to full use of that tissue, right? So it's big.
No, it's good. We appreciate that. Well, as we wind down here, we want to just walk through a couple more kind of rapid fire questions. So this we call, as we're closing out the episode tonight, we call this kind of shoot, move, communicate. So some will be one word answers, some will be short answer. So we'll challenge you a little bit as we wrap. But first question is it might be a little bit of a layup for you, but if you could short answer form here, what accomplishment has made you most proud as a coach?
Having a kid, because training my kid is just as hard as training these guys, but the correlation's like through the roof.
Yeah, cool.
Keep it really simple and to the point and move slow.
Good deal. And I guess this might be a similar answer, but if you could think about it, what accomplishment, like outside of strength coaching, are you most proud of?
Meeting my wife, because she is the structure to my chaos, and I'm pretty sure I would be maybe in, like, I don't know, Thailand or something right now, because I wouldn't have stayed here.
I think we both can echo that. So a lot of fun. One word to describe your strength program philosophy, if you had to pick it.
Multivariant.
Okay.
Dynamic.
Good deal. All right. One word, if you had to encourage, you were obviously a young up and coming coach, moved up the ranks. What would be one word of encouragement to a young up and coming strength coach? What would it be? Don't
stop your feet.
Good deal.
This is really challenging to give one word.
That's all right. It's a one word or phrase. That's fine. The internet auditors can hit you up in the comments about using more than one word. All right. So your ideal athlete, if you had a one word or phrase, what would it be?
Attitude and effort. Shouldn't have to coach that.
Got it.
Coach everything else.
Good deal. We're almost done. If you had to skip one, we asked everybody this. If you had to miss one, a meal, a night of sleep, or a training session for yourself, what would it be?
A meal. Don't yell at me, Justin.
I was going to say, you don't get much food, do you, right now?
But you know what? Like, the way this process has gone, like, I still feel stuff. So I'm gonna hold that for as long as I can.
Good deal.
Good deal. All right. Last thing is, at First Detachment, we talk about being all in, and that our products, like many of us, are battle tested. And so the question is, what is a current or recent battle that you're fighting and kind of pushing through?
Man, my wife is a strength coach as well.
Oh, awesome.
So we're both on average 14 hours from home. Family is always tough this far away, especially as you bring new life into this world, which is already a shit show, to keep it simple.
Sure.
So I think as we get older and as we continue to have more spawn, trying to find that ability to let your family know that you still think about them when they're so far away, and knowing that as you get older, you guys know this, like, when you're a kid, it's so taken for granted, the ability to see your parents, the ability to see your brothers or sisters or aunts or uncles.
Right.
And then you hit that age, like for me, it was like 24. I got a call, my uncle died. And I was like, and I was only 3 hours from home, but I was 3 hours from home. I was working as a GA, like I was recruiting. So I think that, like, that is really hard as we get older, is finding that ability to walk the line of sustaining family and keeping them super hard involved and interacted with our life. Because my mother's getting older, like, she can't just get on a flight. Like,
right.
My wife's family's the same way. So, like, trying to find that time to bridge those gaps, man, that's really hard.
Yeah. It's hard, and you don't really understand it till you have kids of your own. But
right.
there's one thing that I someone gave as a commencement speech, and it was like a 1-sentence commencement speech, and he basically said that on our deathbeds we're all going to have the same thought: I wish I would have spent more time with my family, which is obvious. However, to be a complete human, you have to have a life outside of the family. You have to have goals and things to, and part of being a father is showing your children, that you're working hard and striving and trying to achieve things. So that's like, for me as a father, that's just the hardest thing, is understanding that, like, everything I do outside of the family, when this is all over, all I'm going to wish is I would have spent more time with my family. But you can't just sit with your family 24 hours a day, because you don't grow as a person. Your family doesn't grow as a family, and then even more, like, concretely, you're not able to provide for them. It's tough. It's hard. I think that's the hardest thing, is combining those two.
I think that's what was scary for me when we had our first child, was I remember having panic attacks of like, man, I got to read this or I got to learn this. Like, what if he asked me a question in 15 years and like I don't know it, or like, you know what I mean? Like you start getting these things in your head with it, because again, like you said, like you have to live a dynamic life in order to provide a dynamic existence. And man, we could all sit here and talk about those special moments, those unique experiences we've all had that have made us who we are. So it's like, make the sacrifices, try to make more sacrifices when they're younger is my motto. So they won't remember as much, but then like when you're there for the impactful moments and times and ages, like seize those and hopefully make sure you're setting yourself up for success for that. But yeah, like you have to grind, and you have to, especially in this world now, like, you know, there's no easy paths.
Right.
The easy path is just being good with your average home and a picket fence and your dog that doesn't shut up when the mailman comes, and, you know, saving up for the whole year to go to, you know, Darien Lake 3 hours away and spending a weekend there. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think, you know, you realize when you talk to certain people that they have these grand goals and these grand objectives, and like, I may never get to Mars, but like I'm damn sure going to end up somewhere in outer space.
Yeah,
you know
and
what I mean?
all
Like,
all the real important things are in the process anyways. You know, any very, very difficult achievement, the least exciting part or the least satisfying part of the entire journey is when you complete it, is the finish. You know, you do any major thing, you hate the work to get to the end, and all you're thinking about is that end result. But when that end result happens, it's great, but that's really the least of the whole process. It's really like all that effort building up to it. You just don't realize it at the time, or maybe you do realize it, but I mean, it's just time after time. It's the same thing. It's the journey that's really the gist of it. That's the bulk of it. When it's all said and done, you look back, that's what you remember.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, we want to thank you again for coming on tonight. You know, a ton of information. We definitely got to have you back, and we can even get more deeper and granular in the training philosophies and things. But for the audience out there, you know, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us. Definitely put those questions in the comment section. We'll be happy to answer those questions, or we can reach out to Greg on your behalf and get some more answers if you're an athlete, up and comer, or current, and or a strength coach and you'd like to learn more. We're definitely passionate about creating useful educational content, everybody. So thanks again to my co-host Justin Harris and Greg for joining us tonight. And you guys have a good night. We'll see you.
Appreciate it.